Clinical psychologist Linda Blair says Karen's was a typical case.
Oh, I think it's very classic. There are so many features in Karen's condition that are classic of anorexia. There are certain factors that run through a lot of anorexia. One is the obsessionality. Usually, and it is part of a whole obsessional picture, a need for precision, a need for control, a need for neatness, different aspects. Not always, but really quite often, so much so that some psychologists think that anorexia is just a subset of obsessive-compulsive disorder. The person is first obsessional, and it comes out as an eating disorder. That's what I would mean by that. That the primary diagnosis, the main problem, is the obsessionality. I felt that Karen's obsession with her body size, first of all, is a defining characteristic of anorexia, but she focused on her hips. And the hips were, sounds like they were fairly big, but more importantly were just like her mother's. And a lot of her problem was feeling this over-control I've mentioned by her mother. And so I don't think she wanted to identify with her mother, and she was getting rid of her mom with her hips. I haven't interviewed this mother, so I can't say for sure, but my feeling was that part of her pushing was for her own gratification rather than for the best interests of the children. I did some research on this very topic, and what I found was that if you ask an anorexic, if they'll tell you how large they are, they'll give you one answer. Then you ask them how large they look compared to other people, they'll give you an answer. And then if you ask them how large they feel they are, they give you an answer that's really out of proportion. They do know that they're not actually fat, but they feel big, and I think what they're saying is that they feel out of control, and this is something that they feel maybe they can control, is their body size. They know the difference, but they don't feel it, and what they're telling you about being fat is how they feel. The treatment for psychological illnesses of any sort at the time that Karen was suffering was usually either medication, and it wouldn't be in the case of anorexia, or psychoanalytic therapy, which means that you talk about your early childhood and undo the things that went wrong and supposedly with the therapist redo them in a better way. And it made my heart break because I really wish that the modern approach to anorexia had been around for her. I can't promise she'd been saved, but I think she'd have had such a better chance of getting back into her own mind and making some of her own life goals, and then thereby being cured. Because I do believe you can cure anorexia, and I don't think it has much to do with how long you've had it. I think it has to do with the type of treatment you get and whether or not you can form and achieve some goals that are your own. At one point he said, I believe Levinson himself said, Karen might, if she emerges from this, never want to sing again. And Karen might emerge from this having her own mind. Yeah. She had to emerge from that having her own mind, or she wouldn't emerge. That was the problem. I think it's very interesting to look at Richard and Karen when they became famous, or when they started working together, too, which was before they were famous. Richard was more of an age where he chose to do what he did. Karen, between 15 and 19 is when most kids start making their independence, when they start deciding what they're going to do and break away from their families. Karen never got a chance to do that because her talent was discovered. And in fact, the talent she loved, the drums, was not the one that was promoted as well. So from the beginning, this child never had a chance to think, what do I want to do and where do I want to send my life? Her life was sent. It was directed, and things she loved were not pursued. And I can see why she turned to something she could control.